Welcome to this week's edition of Flashback Friday, your opportunity to get some good review by listening to episodes from the past that Jason has handpicked to help you today in the present and propel you into the future. Enjoy.
This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to Creating Wealth with Jason Hartman. During this program, Jason is going to tell you some really exciting things that you probably haven't thought of before, and a new slant on investing. Fresh new approaches to America's best investment that will enable you to create more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine, self-made multi-millionaire who not only talks the talk, but walks the walk. He's been a successful investor for 20 years and currently owns properties in 11 states and 17 cities. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to financial freedom. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show. This is episode number 271, and this is your host, Jason Hartman, and thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed last episode where we had world-famous John Gray, the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and all his related books to that great title. Boy, I tell you, with just a great book title, you can go a long way in this world, and that is no doubt a great book title. So we wanted to first talk about a couple things on today's show. I'm going to play an interview that I did on someone else's show for you that I think you'll find that of interest, and talk a little bit about organizational techniques and our upcoming event as well. But first, we have a caller, Robert, who called into the show, and let's play that now, and I'll be right back after that. Hey, we've got Bob from Denver on the line, and he's calling in. Bob, how are you?
Great, Jason. How's it going today?
Good. Hey, thanks for calling into the Creating Wealth Show. So you have a question, and I know you wanted to share an experience you have, too.
Absolutely. Well, my main reason to call you, too, is to thank you for what you're doing here. It's an invaluable service that has really absolutely changed my family's life, because now, this is something I wanted to do 20 years ago, but didn't have the means to do it. And like you said, this is such a perfect storm of a situation that you got to take advantage of, and I wouldn't have been able to do it unless I had discovered what you're doing, and it's really made a big difference. Well, that's for sure.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. So that's awesome. So I met you and your wife, I think, the first time on our Phoenix tour. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, we came down for that event.
And that was actually our first Phoenix tour, right? That was the one we had last year or this year?
It was this year.
Oh, it was the one this year in January, right?
Right, and we came down because I actually stumbled across your program by finding your podcast a year ago, and wanted to make that Masters event back in October last year, but it didn't work out. So we came to that event in January, and I mainly wanted to have my wife understand what the program was all about, and it was very informative, and it really helped us focus on what we needed to do. So, and then after that, and then we came to the Masters event back in April, and learned even more. So
fantastic. Well, that's great. So you were sharing with me before we started recording for the show that you took the equity out of one property and you were able to purchase 4 more properties, right?
That's correct. When we we told you we've been working hard over the last 15 years to pay down our house, and we almost had the thing practically paid off, and so we put that money to work, and by extracting as much equity out of it as I could, and we turned that into 4 houses.
That's fantastic. So where are the properties you bought? Yeah, paying off your house is such a misnomer. It's such a scam. Don't do it. Just not a good idea.
Well, especially, right.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mention that, too, because when you mention that to people nowadays, they look at you like you're from Mars. It's like, what are you talking about? but it makes sense when you look at your strategy, because you're taking that low interest fixed rate money and you're applying it into properties that are as cheap as they've ever been. And now's the opportunity I mentioned. It's like, I wish I could have done this 20 years ago. Well, this is an even better opportunity than it was 20 years ago because of the prices on these houses, and they're selling for such cheap valuations. And if you find the right properties, and we've got to get them rented out, boy, it's just a beautiful situation. So we took advantage of that, just like you said, and it's working out fantastic.
Yeah, good. Where did you purchase the other properties?
Well, our first one was in Kansas City, and then our second one was in Dallas, actually a suburb of Rowlett, and then we ended up buying 2 in Memphis because we had a budget to stick to, and we decided to go with 2 properties in Memphis because the valuations there were just extraordinary. I couldn't believe it. It's like I was picking up these brick ranches for next to nothing. I couldn't believe what we were picking up.
Yeah, good for you. Now, how much equity did you take out of the house?
We took out 200. Well, let's see. We had to subtract out the balance of the loan. So basically, I had $200,000 to spend.
Okay, so here now, I don't know if you know these numbers offhand, but if you do, it'd be great because I think the listeners will really like hearing this, Bob. So $200,000 in equity you pulled out of the house. And how much does that cost you each month? What is the payment on that equity? Just the principal and interest, because you'd have the property taxes and the insurance anyway. So just principal and interest. Do you know what that payment is on that $200,000 you borrowed?
Well, let's see. That's a good question. Let's see. Just the principal and interest should be about. I'm just doing it in my head. Should be about $1,200.
Okay, so about $1,200 there. Now, let me ask you this. What is the positive cash flow on the 4 properties you bought with that $200,000? And by the way, it's fair to ask, did you keep any money out that you didn't buy anything with? Like, for example, maybe to buy the 4 properties, it cost you $150,000 and you kept $50,000 on the side. I don't know if you did, but I'm just asking that.
No, well, we had cash in the bank. So this is what I actually did: is I had $200 to spend, but we did leverage some of the money. I took an additional loan on the property in Dallas. That's like another $82,000 that we. So in essence, we're spending $282,000 here.
Welcome to this week's edition of Flashback Friday, your opportunity to get some good review by listening to episodes from the past that Jason has handpicked to help you today in the present and propel you into the future. Enjoy.
For total is what we do. So I have to add that in. So that would be another $650 if I take out the insurance and taxes and all that.
What I'm trying to get to is the net result of this, not including the investment return, but just based on the very simple equation of cash flow, not investment return, okay, which of course will amplify it tremendously. But for example, would you say that you've gained in taking that money out? Did you get more money back each month, or are you spending more each month?
No, I'm getting back more than what we put out now.
Okay, so approximately how much? Because if you look at the net effect, you had a house that was almost paid off, and then you went and refinanced it because you listened to me, and at first you probably thought I was crazy, or at least your wife probably thought I was crazy, and then you refinanced it, you pulled the money out, you bought 4 more rental properties, you've diversified your portfolio. Instead of just having a property in Denver, now you've got properties in a bunch of cities, so that's fantastic. But what is the net effect? Like, are you up, all things considered, how much are you up each month? How much?
Yeah, I ran the numbers. I run everything through after we pay everything, including all of our expenses, management fees, taxes, all of that. We're clearing $900 a month.
Fantastic. So you're up 900.
We're up, $900 a month. Yeah. So
isn't that amazing?
That's conservative. And it could be better if we tweak things a little bit and try to be a little conscious on some of our expenses. But yeah, $900 a month instead of and and on top of all the write-offs that we get.
Yeah, and of course you've got investment return and write-off and all of that stuff. I get it. But just think, the vast majority of America is listening to people like Dave Ramsey who just don't get it. I mean, look at his advice would be pay that house off. And now you're in a far better position than you are owning that house free and clear. I mean, your risk is much lower. You've diversified. You don't have all your eggs in the Denver basket. God forbid if there's some natural disaster that just wipes that house out, your insurance company is going to go to bat and fight with your lender, your lender is going to go to bat and fight with your insurance company for you to get your claim paid. Whereas if you own it free and clear, you've got to fight with the insurance company. You know, it's like, there are so many aspects to it that make it so much better off to do exactly what you did. You've done the right thing, so congratulations. Now, just a disclaimer on the Dave Ramsey thing, okay? I like Dave Ramsey for the market he serves. I mean, I think that for people who have a bunch of credit card debt and a bunch of student loans, you know, he's fine. But he's a totally defensive strategy, not an offensive strategy. And what we offer is an offensive strategy. So I know you know that because you've listened to all my shows. So
exactly. Yeah, and you're right. He teaches people who don't have the discipline to keep their checkbook straight. So, but you're right. But for what you do, you're for somebody who's looking to be more responsible with their money and try to keep their hard-earned money and their wealth, and they want a strategic way of maintaining it. This is absolutely the best thing I've ever found.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, hey, I'm really glad, and thank you so much for your business. Do you have any other questions for me before we let you go?
Yeah, I've been wondering what's your take on my mom, as an example. She's retired, of course, 75 years old, lives in a house that's all paid for, but it's not a very expensive house. It probably would be like approximately a $225,000 to $250,000 house. And she lives, on her Social Security, and she has her, some money left over from some investments that she gets monthly checks from. Would she be just that one house, something like that? Can a retiree like her take that house and do exactly what I'm doing with my house? My wife and I are doing with our house.
So
also.
The house is paid off. How much did you say the house was worth?
Should be somewhere around $225,000 to $250,000.
Oh, she can absolutely do that. Now, the thing you got to be careful of, though, with someone that age is, of course, you got to be more conservative and more careful. Okay, but she can definitely do it. The other thing is, how old is she, if I may ask?
She's 75.
So the other question is, look, my mom is up around that age too. But the other question to ask is, does she have the temperament, and will she be willing to sort of manage that portfolio? Of course, through our network, she doesn't have to manage the property herself, but she does sort of have to manage the manager. And you can do it for her, but how savvy and how confident and how willing is she in terms of doing it herself? Because that's the other thing you've got to think of with a person that age. I mean, my mom manages all her own properties. She doesn't use managers. And, she loves it, but she's a little bit weird. I'll be the first to say. That may not be the thing for your mom.
That definitely takes a certain personality and yeah, you're right about that. No doubt about it.
So the question, can she do it? Can she pull money out of that house? People that age too are also eligible for reverse mortgages. That's another area to explore. And I don't know much about the reverse mortgage area, but it's worth looking into. And that might be another thing to consider. But probably just a typical refinance, if she can qualify for it, pulling that money out of the property and then diversifying it into maybe 2 or 3 different markets. I would diversify a little less with her because I'd rather have her own maybe 2 properties in each of 2 cities rather than 4 in different cities. So at least she'll be, she has fewer parties to deal with, and she has a little more business for that property manager, so a little more weight with them. But, I think our oldest client we've had is about 89 years old now, a retired doctor, and, he's doing a lot of business through us. We certainly have people all ages buying through our network and doing exactly that. But can she do it? Yeah, she can do exactly what you did.
Okay. Yeah, it's a matter of if she was willing to invest the time and then helping manage it. So
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. So
there is one other area that I would mention. The private lending is kind of a good deal for someone that age too, because with the private lending opportunity, there's a lot less management. And look, I've said this before on the show. I do a lot of private lending. I just wired $64,000 off today to do another deal in Georgia that I'm doing. And I love private lending. It's not as good as actually owning the real property, though. The property is better, but the thing I like about the private lending is the simplicity. It's a lot easier. You basically just wire the money and you get more back. I mean, there's a little more to it than that, but you don't have to deal with any managers. There's just very little complexity to it. So that's another thing to think about. And, she'd earn about 12.25%. So, that's another area that we might want to explore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're just short-term loans. They're usually only about 4 to 6 months each time. So you get the money back quickly, and you see it roll, and you get it back. You put it in your account, then you look at another deal and make another loan. And does she use email? I know that may be a silly question, but you have to ask.
Well, you never know. It's 75.
Yeah, some older people don't. So they can just email her a deal. She can look at it. They could copy you on it. They could copy me on it. We could kind of look at it for her, and she could do that. That might be a good way to go.
Yes, sir. All right.
Okay,
Very
good. Well, hey, Bob, thanks for calling in the show, and we will talk to you soon.
Yes, thanks for your time, Jason.
Well, I hope more of you will call into the show. And again, the call-in number for the show, it's great because I had one of our listeners from Australia call me last night. It was kind of late that he called, but heck, I didn't mind. And I took that call, and we really want to encourage more of you to call into the show. Let me give you an updated call-in number that we're using, and this is a Google Voice line. It is 480-788-7823. That's 480-788-7823 to call in to the show and get your questions answered. Some of the most important parts of your real estate investing business, we all want to think of this as you're going to become rich and successful, and you're not going to have to work, and you're going to get to do whatever you want and live the life of financial freedom. But really, some of the most important parts of your business, if you will, as a real estate investor, are the non-sexy parts. And those are the parts of just doing your thing day by day that really, really make it work. And I'd like to encourage you to go back and listen to one of our old episodes. It's actually episode number 44. I believe that's still up. If it's not up publicly, it's in the members section, of course. And you can find that at jasonhartman.com if you are a member. But I really wanted to stress just a little quick overview on the importance of getting organized in your business. Now, I've always believed that the best way to do this, of course, use the property tracker software. That is vitally important. But in addition to that, use a file system that includes 2 physical files. And these 2 physical files are, number 1, your acquisition file. And your acquisition file is what you use when you acquire the property. And that has all of your documents related to the purchase of the property, as the name would imply. It's the acquisition file. So here you use these 6-tab organization or classification folders, and you can get these at any office supply or online on Amazon.com. They're kind of expensive, but hey, you don't need to buy very many of them. Maybe you'll have 30, 40 properties, so you have 30, 40 of each file. No big deal, really. And on your acquisition folder, each of these 6 tabs is meant for 6 different things. And I learned this just by organizing my own property. This is my own method, and I created it with Karen, my operations manager at one of my old companies. And, we just kind of found that this works really, really well. So the acquisition folder is a legal size folder. So it's the longer paper, the legal size paper. Tab 1, you have a description of the property, the sales brochure, the plot plans, any photos, anything like that. Tab 2, you have the purchase contract and the final HUD-1 statement, in other words, the closing or settlement statement. Tab number 3, you have your insurance information and a copy of the warranty on the property, if any, and most of them have warranties. Tab number 4, you have your loan package, okay? So I love the concept of what I call tenant-backed debt on good properties that can create extraordinary wealth. We outsource our debt to our tenants. So tab 4 will have our loan package, and that's the first loan package. Sometimes you get 2 loans with the property. Sometimes you refinance the property. So there may be ultimately multiple loan packages. Tab number 5, you have the appraisal or any competitive or comparative market analysis information for the property. And finally, tab 6 in the acquisition file, you have the second loan package. So if you have a second trust deed or second loan on the property, or any miscellaneous documents or any refinance documents of the property, that can all be organized under tab number 6. And at our next Meet the Masters event, we're going to go over this in a little more detail because this is just pretty simple stuff, but it's pretty important stuff. And on the next episode, time permitting, I will talk about the operations file, and that is the file where you manage the ongoing operations of the property. The acquisition file that I just discussed, once that's created, you can pretty much put it in the bottom drawer, and you're probably not going to look at it very often. And the other thing we'll talk about in subsequent episodes, of course, as we've talked about in prior episodes, is we'll talk about software and using Property Tracker and other software to organize your investment portfolio. So stay tuned. We'll talk about more of that stuff, but I just wanted to quickly mention that acquisitions file and how you organize it. These simple little things, they're not complicated, of getting yourself organized can really, really help you. Also, be sure to join us for our Atlanta property tour. That's at the end of September, and a lot of you have registered. I'm very glad to see that, and I hope a lot more of you register for that as well. You can do so at jasonhartman.com/events. That, again, is jasonhartman.com/events, and the Atlanta property tour has some fantastic early bird pricing for September 28th through the 30th. We look forward to seeing you there. Of course, we will have on Saturday the Creating Wealth Boot Camp. So you really get 2 things in one, the property tour and the boot camp, all at the same time in the same great weekend. Okay, so let's go to an interview I recorded a couple of months ago, actually, about 2 months ago, I think. And this was on one of the guests we had on our show. He interviewed me on his, and I think it was an interesting interview where you can hear more about kind of gold and inflation and investing. And, a lot of the stuff we always talk about, but there's always a new nuance, new wrinkle to it. And so we will be right back with that interview in just less than 60 seconds. Don't forget to register for the property tour, Creating Wealth Bootcamp, and don't forget to call into the show. I love to get your calls and your questions. So we will be right back with that interview here in just a moment. Be sure to call into the Creating Wealth Show and get your real estate, investing, and economics questions answered by me personally. We'd love to have you call in, share your experiences, ask your questions, and a lot of other people listening have those very same questions. So be a participant in the show at 480-788-7823. That's 480-788-7823, or anywhere in the world via Skype, Jason Hartman, ROI. That's Jason Hartman, ROI, for return on investment. Be sure to call into the show, and we are going to enter all of the callers in a drawing for some nice prizes as well. So be sure to call into the show, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
Hi, this is Daniel at FutureMoneyTrends.com. Thanks for joining me today. I'm here with my friend Jason Hartman of JasonHartman.com. He also is host of the Creating Wealth Show. Jason, thanks so much for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Jason, I'm very interested in everything you have to say and on your show because you're focused on inflation. You're focused on the devaluation of the currency. You're focused on everything, someone who's concerned about inflation or inflation bug or gold bug, right, except you're buying real estate.
Yeah, well, things are a mess, and I used to say that I was an optimist, and now I'm an opportunist. So we've got to move to how can we're probably not, unless Ron Paul wins, okay, we're probably not going to see any major sea change in the way our nation and our world acts. we need to just exploit the opportunities that are available to us. And I believe that we are going to see very major, significant inflation in the future in most parts of the economy. And, how can we exploit it? Most people, all of the gold bugs, for example, they have the right premise. They're not wrong on their premise. Their understanding of history, their understanding of the problem is completely accurate, in my opinion. However, their solution to the problem is massively simplistic. We believe that the metals, gold and silver, are a one-dimensional asset class. They're okay. They're just not great. They're defensive, they're not offensive. And, maybe the best way to illustrate how I kind of really had my aha moment with this is to understand what happened when I got a phone call from a local gold dealer, a company named Monex. And, I was on their list, and their telemarketer called me up and said, Mr. Hartman, gold is $420 an ounce. So you know what happened here, right? And, Iran, Iraq, uncertainty, inflation, the Federal Reserve, blah, blah, blah. You should buy. And he went on with his spiel, and, everything he said made complete sense to me. And this was, several years ago, of course. And I was already purchasing some gold and silver and a little bit of platinum and palladium, too. And I liked what he had to say, and I said, okay, look, stop selling me. I'll buy. Okay, you sold me. I'll just, this was my first time as a client with him. I said, look, I'll send you a $5,000 check. You send me the 12 coins, and I'll do that tomorrow. You've sold me, so you can stop selling. I just have a couple of questions now. Okay, my first question is, and I went on to explain that I like income properties. One of the reasons I like income properties is that I can finance them for 3 decades at incredibly historically low interest rates, right? Will you finance my gold? And he said, no, we don't do that. And I said, okay, fine, I'll pay cash. Then the second thing I said is, the other thing I like about my income properties is I can rent them out to other people and they produce income, as the name would imply. And he said, well, I don't think anybody rents gold coins. And it really drives the point home that income property is a multidimensional asset class. And the uninformed person, they look at it and they say, the cocktail party conversation is, oh, so you're in real estate. What do? Residential or commercial? And I say housing. Okay, it doesn't have to be residential or commercial. Could be large apartment complexes. Those are commercial properties. Could be single-family homes, duplexes, and fourplexes. Those are residential properties, okay? But housing is where it's at. Because one thing we know for sure is that they can outsource all the manufacturing jobs to China. They can outsource the call centers to India and the Philippines. Okay, they can outsource retail purchasing to the internet, which lessens the need for retail properties and shopping centers and so forth. And we're seeing all those trends, most certainly, right? But at the end of the day, the population in the United States is increasing, and everybody needs a place to live. And they only have 3 choices: buy, rent, or be homeless. So back to the gold story, the uninformed person, when they talk about real estate, they say, the typical cocktail party conversation is, well, isn't real estate still going down? Well, yes and no, it depends where. This is a country where we have about 400 local markets. And the old saying in real estate is that all real estate is local. And it is. It's very localized. So if you talk about places like, the Socialist Republic of California, okay, where I used to live and where we happen to be now, prices are still declining. And any high land value market is in for still more of a rude awakening. In the Northeast, many parts of Florida still wouldn't touch them. Las Vegas, still too early, I wouldn't touch it. And the Chicagoland area is another good example of, still declining. But even if prices are declining, the prudent investor that understands the multidimensional nature of the asset class says, so what? I know how to play the game either way. Because if I get a certain cash-on-cash return from that property based on the income it produces, if the value drops to 0, and it still produces the income, and I can maintain the expenses the way they are, who cares? It's a bond. It's an income property bond.
So when you look at real estate, you're not looking at it as if someone bought gold, they're hoping the gold's going to go up.
Right.
For you, for real estate, of course you would like to see it go up, but in the end, does it matter to you if it goes up?
It doesn't matter. I consider appreciation the icing on the cake. There's two kinds of investors. There's the dairy farmer and the cattle rancher. The dairy farmer milks the cows, like the story of the golden goose, right? The goose that laid the golden eggs, milks the cows and sells the milk. That's the income. The cattle rancher slaughters the cows and sells the beef. And that's the speculative investor that invests only from a capital gains perspective, right? And so the gold bugs, that's the way they are. They're into seeing prices go up, and you just have no control over it. I mean, I have yet, in my many, many years, over 2 decades of being involved in the real estate industry, I have yet to see anyone who can really accurately predict price appreciation.
Yeah.
And, you are a total expert on gold and metals and things like that. And you I'm sure, will admit nobody can really predict the prices of gold and silver either.
No, and it's very difficult for a lot of other reasons because they are, a metal that's on the radar of the central banks and stuff.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a great point that you make, Daniel, because gold and silver, 6 billion, well, now 7 billion people on Earth, not all of them are of age, obviously, but, they'd agree with one thing. Gold and silver are money, and I agree with that, too. But money is not an investment. Money is great. It's better than not having money. I like gold and silver. I think it's a great way to save money. I think it's better than fiat money. I think it's better than depreciating dollars. But the problem is that entities far more powerful than us, central banks around the world and governments around the world that like to spend irresponsibly so they can buy votes, gold and silver being real money as opposed to currency like the fake stuff they print, that's competition for them. They don't want people investing in gold and silver because that takes away from their fiat money scam. Or maybe a nicer way to say it is scheme.
You can use scheme.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's take it to the individual. An individual is concerned about hyperinflation or massive currency devaluation over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Right. Which will happen, in my opinion.
They buy a house. Say they go 20% down. They've got a 10% return on their money as far as their down payment. How do you see the inflationary environment playing out for them? What are they going to experience with that investment for the next 10 years?
Great question. They're going to experience a whole bunch of things. The first thing that they're going to experience, and I'm going to talk about some of the unique aspects first maybe, okay? And one of the really unique aspects, I think, is what we call inflation-induced debt destruction. So inflation is always attacking assets or helping assets. It's attacking our savings in our bank account. It's attacking the value of our stocks, the value of our bonds, and oddly, from a real estate guy, the value of our equity in real estate. Okay, inflation attacks those things, but fortunately and thankfully, it also attacks the value of our debt. So if we have $1 million in real estate loans and the inflation rate is 10%, which I think it is already. Currently we're experiencing 10%. In real inflation when you don't look at the official statistics, right? Yeah. So if inflation is at 10%, 1 year from now, you only in real dollars owe $900,000, but the statement still says you owe $1 million.
Yeah.
The question is, what is the nominal value and the real value of those dollars? So I think it's entirely possible. I mean, abundantly possible for us in the next several years to see an inflation rate at 20, 25, 30%, which historically, when you look at other countries, that's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is nothing compared to the crazy examples, Weimar Republic, Zimbabwe, Hungary, Argentina. I mean, that's nothing. They've had much higher inflation rates than that, obviously.
Now, when you're looking at interest rates and the overall economy, because, I mean, overall we do, like you said, we often agree on things, just maybe the solutions are different.
Right.
So we've got high unemployment, long-term unemployment still around a record. We're probably going to continue. There's no driver for jobs. Interest rates.
Real unemployment at probably 24, 26%.
Very high. So if we see a spike in interest rates, it's probably going to hurt the economy more. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about real estate, mm-hmm. You mentioned that you didn't like Vegas. You said Florida, not yet. Right. Northeast, not yet. What approach should people take? I mean, how can someone in Vegas, What are they supposed to do?
Well, if you're already there and you're having problems with an income property that you have there, I mean, try and do a workout with your lender. And this is another reason I love debt. You know, I like to joke and say it's my favorite four-letter word, okay? Debt. Because there's an old saying, a book I read many years ago called The Greatest Management Principle in the World by Michael LeBeau. And he said, his famous saying there is, what gets rewarded gets repeated. And unfortunately, philosophically, I disagree with it, but it's the reality, and I'm not going to change it. What gets rewarded is people who have a lot of debt, not only by inflation-induced debt destruction that I mentioned, but also by loan modifications, workouts, and short sales. The typical foreclosure in the United States takes well over 700 days now. People live in their houses for free, and that's why so many people are strategically defaulting. And, you know, frankly, as crazy as this sounds, it's like the bizarro world, okay? But people who are paying their mortgage have to ask themselves, am I a sucker? You know, I mean, should I really be paying my mortgage? You know, we have clients say that to us all the time. And, you know, it's kind of hard to answer that question because when you see everybody who has lots of debt, they're frankly getting rewarded, okay? Because they're getting the loan modifications. The people who paid off their house, they're not getting anything. You look at what happens when you have natural disasters. Like a good example is Katrina, you know, several years ago. The Katrina hurricane, you know, there was a moratorium on mortgage payments placed in all of those affected areas in the Gulf Coast, okay? You know, the attorney generals, I guess, went to the mortgage companies and just said, hey, you know, you got to give people a break. I mean, this is devastation, right? And even regardless of the moratorium, people stopped paying their mortgages and just walked away.
Yeah.
But someone who owned their property free and clear, they didn't get anything.
That's a good point.
Isn't that unfair? It's totally unfair.
Yeah.
But it's the reality of the situation.
Yeah. Now, just going over the overall housing market, because you are absolutely a real estate expert, you said housing does have some more to go. You look at the Treasury Department funding, you know, I don't know, last I checked, it was around 90% of the loans. Fed's got interest rates at 0%. How much more is housing going? What is going to happen when interest rates are at 10, 15%?
Oh, great question. So, you know, you asked me a minute ago, and I don't know if I totally answered the question about what can someone expect over the 10 years. So this is part of it. You know, this is kind of blends into that question. Income property is a multidimensional asset class. People only have three choices: buy, rent, or be homeless. Someone in one of my seminars said, no, they could live with their parents. Okay, well, fair enough. Some people can do that. So if interest rates go up, that will massively reduce housing affordability. Housing affordability right now is fantastic. I mean, prices are down and rates are low. It's very rare to get that combination at the same time. Yeah. And that's why there's so much urgency to buy, you know, and business is great for my company right now because of that. And so if you see interest rates go up, that will put people out of the housing market. So if we see higher rates, people can't afford to buy, so they have to rent. So then we see upward pressure on rents. I teach something on the Creating Wealth show that I call the 3 dimensions of real estate. Okay, and it's really more than 3 dimensions, but that's kind of a catchy way to say it. So, you know, prices go down, rents go up. Those are typically contrary indicators, okay? When prices are low and affordability is high, and this is what we don't have now, and people can actually get mortgages, which now you've got low prices and low rates and high affordability, but the banks are just not lending as much as they should, you know. And so when people can get the mortgages, then they rush in and they buy, and that tends to cause prices to go up. And that tends to soften rents. It puts downward pressure on rents because people are being sucked out of the renter pool into the ownership pool, okay? And, you know, George Bush had this thing he called the ownership society, which, you know, is kind of sounds good from the podium, but in reality, the fact is some people just can't handle it, okay? Yeah. You can't handle the truth, you know, they can't handle home ownership. And so, you know, for every 1% decline in the home ownership rate, it adds about 1 million new renters to the renter pool. So as an income property investor, understanding that it's a multi-dimensional asset class, you just play the game either way. If rents are going up, you're a dairy farmer. If prices are going up, you might consider being a cattle rancher and selling the beef. You know, see what I mean? So you milk it for income or you milk it for capital appreciation.
The less people that can afford a home, the more renters in the end. Yeah. So possible rental boom even.
And the irony now, though, is that people can afford it now because rates are low and prices are low at the same time, totally rare, but the mortgages are unavailable.
Okay. In closing, you are a very successful individual. I always appreciate your shows and anything you put out. What advice do you have for someone who just graduated high school? Or maybe they're in college, their first or second year, and they're just picking up those general units. What is your advice? What should they be doing? They're having trouble getting jobs. People with degrees can't get jobs, or they get laid off. And what's your advice for somebody young right now who wants to be an individual that can grow and have some wealth?
Well, first of all, I think the first thing is do not get a liberal arts degree, okay? Because there are no jobs, okay? Yeah. Philosophy, it's an interesting subject. I love it. All these liberal arts things, being an English major, what are you going to do with that? The teaching jobs are drying up. The cost of college, as you well know, because I know you were involved in a documentary on that subject, is outrageous. It's way above things. So study things that are hard sciences. We need to, in America, we need to get back in the game as other countries have. They've taken our place where we're the leader in science and technology, in R&D, in manufacturing, in real things, tangible things that really do things in the world and are things that the economy needs to produce value. So don't get a liberal arts degree. That's my first question. The other question is, or the other thing is, I might can say, and this sounds weird, it sounds counterintuitive, it sounds bad, because I'm a big believer in education, okay? And I'm a big believer in self-education. But, you might consider not going to college. College ain't what it used to be. It is massively overpriced. These colleges have become incredibly bureaucratic. They've become the professors that work 12 hours a week and have tenure and, aren't teaching practical skills in many cases. Some are, okay, so I don't want to say that's not a blanket statement. But, I would be really, really concerned about piling up a bunch of student loan debt that, as you taught me, is not dischargeable in bankruptcy. Okay, I did not know that before you told me that. And that is a scary thing. And I think, if you want to get conspiratorial about that, that may actually be part of some grand plan somewhere. Because basically they're making these college students who have this student loan debt indentured servants, slaves for life. It can never be discharged. So I would really, really think hard and long about taking on student loan debt.
Yeah, I think what you just touched on, it is. I think it's overall part of the entitlement society. Number one, you're keeping them incentivized to work,
right.
But everybody is conditioned to always get a job, and the company is going to get your health care, and the company is going to get your retirement plan. And it's an extension of the mindset of not taking care of yourself.
Right. The entitlement society is over. Okay. Now, granted, it seems like it's not over. Okay. I understand that when you've got, Obama has massively increased the number of people on food stamps, and, like 47% of the country is receiving some kind of government aid now. But the fact is, folks, the government is broke. This is a house of cards. It is an illusion created by the whole system, the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, the political elite. It is an illusion. This is not going to last. And the hangover from this is going to be very painful for many, many people. But, as we talked about on the optimistic side, there are ways you can exploit the hell out of this. And one way is to pile up long-term fixed-rate investment-grade debt against what I call packaged commodities. Income properties. Because think about it. Every house, every apartment building is made out of 2x4s, wood, okay, lumber, petroleum products, copper wire, concrete, glass,
silver in there,
steel, silver. Yeah, it's all there. You're investing in a set of commodities that are assembled and usable in that form. And you can get 3-decade-long fixed rate inflation-induced debt destruction against those commodities.
Well, I certainly do believe real estate is a hard asset. So hopefully I don't get you in trouble with anybody in your network, but I've got to ask you, because I know people are going to be curious. Looking at real estate markets, you said there was 400 roughly in the U.S.
Yep.
What are your favorite 5?
Oh, gosh, that's like asking a mother to pick her favorite kids. I really, and this changes, so it depends when you listen to this interview, okay? And, you can always find my top 5 at jasonhartman.com and what we're recommending at the time. But we like to say that we're area agnostic. We're not attached to any one market. Unlike these big national real estate firms, we have no physical presence in any market, which is great. It makes us not tied to the treadmill of having to recommend something we don't want to recommend.
Yeah.
We are fluid. We move in and out, okay? And right now at the moment, we love Atlanta. We love Indianapolis. We love Dallas. We love Houston. We like Phoenix, although Phoenix is getting pretty hard to do business in at the moment because the inventory is so scarce. But there's still shadow inventory coming at us, so we look forward to shadow inventory, okay? Because that means when in shadow inventory, maybe your listeners want to know what that is. That just means all of the houses that have yet to be foreclosed on and dumped onto the real estate market, lowering prices potentially by increasing supply of homes for sale. But also, think about it, someone lived in those houses, they got to become renters because their credit has been destroyed.
Yeah.
So
it's very bullish.
Yeah.
Jason, if someone would like to reach out to you, where's the best place for them to go?
Just jasonhartman.com. That's JASONHARTMAN.com, and that's my website. You can find me there or just Google me.
Thanks so much for sharing with us.
Thanks, Daniel.
You have a good one.
Now's your opportunity to get the Financial Freedom Report. The Financial Freedom Report provides financial self-defense in uncertain times, and it's your source for innovative, forward-thinking investment property strategies and advice. Get your newsletter subscription today. You get a digital download and even more. Go to jasonhartman.com to get yours today. This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company, all rights reserved. For distribution or publication rights and media interviews, please visit www.hartmanmedia.com or email media@hartmanmedia.com. Nothing on this show should be considered specific personal or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own, and the host is acting on behalf of Platinum Properties Investor Network, Inc. exclusively.